Welcome back. If it's Tuesday, somebody is voting somewhere, and today one of those somewheres, because there's a few places voting today, but the place we're focused on is Wisconsin, where ballots are being cast in municipal elections, including a special mayoral contest in Milwaukee after longtime Mayor Tom Barrett resigned to become the U.S. ambassador to Luxembourg. Today's elections have us taking a look at how voters are voting in Wisconsin after a state judge recently declared unmonitored ballot drop boxes illegal in today's election. Whether that ruling will stand for federal elections this year is pending a ruling from the state Supreme Court, but at least today, Wisconsin voters will not be able to place their ballots in unmonitored drop boxes as they have long been accustomed to doing. Can you put them in unmonitored mail, regular old U.S. mailboxes? The ruling also specifies that a voter must personally deliver or mail his or her own absentee ballot, which is making it nearly impossible for some people to vote. Shaquille Brewster is on the ground for us in Milwaukee with the story. And Shaq, I have a few questions here, and I know probably more than we have time to answer, but, you know, is it being enforced? I guess that's the number one question I have. And the second is, are people not able to vote?
It depends where you are. That's the answer to the first question. Here in Milwaukee, they've gotten a workaround. They're saying that the law doesn't require election clerks to confirm that a person is returning their own ballot. So they're just not doing that. But I talked to some voters in other areas of the state that said they went to their clerk and said, hey, I have my wife's ballot. Can I submit this? My wife is, she has foot reconstructive surgery, is not able to leave. Can I mail her ballot or can I hand that to the clerk? And they said they were denied from doing so. And that is the consequence of this ruling that a circuit judge made back in January. You mentioned the Supreme Court here in the state is going to review that, but you have disabled voters who want to participate in this election here now, saying that they're forced to make a moral dilemma, whether or not, or they're facing a moral dilemma, whether or not they vote and participate in this election, or whether they ignore or just go ahead and not participate. I want you to listen to my conversation with Martha Chambers. She was paralyzed from her neck down about 27 years ago. And listen to how she put it.
I should be able to vote. It's my right to vote, just like anyone else. And this particular ban goes against my ability to vote by saying that someone has to physically put their ballot in a mailbox or hand it to someone.
She told me that she just doesn't think the judge was considering people like her when he made his ruling. And Chuck, I also talked to the person in the group who led that lawsuit that ultimately led to these changes, the elimination of drop boxes statewide. And the intent behind the law, he says, is that they wanted to avoid partisan actors, partisan groups from being able to collect absentee ballots and then submit them whenever they wanted to, ballot harvesting as it's called in some areas. But he said, he admitted, for cases like Martha, there may be future litigation or future legislation needed to help correct some of the errors of this circuit court ruling.
I mean, Shaq, the American Disabilities Act, it's very possible this is in violation of it, pure and simple.
That's exactly what the director of the Milwaukee Elections Commission told me. And that is why she has this workaround where she says that her clerks are just not going to check, because she'd rather be in violation of, one judge's interpretation of election law, a new interpretation, than being in violation of the American Disabilities Act and also the Voting Rights Act. So it's putting clerks in a pretty precarious situation. But you know the national conversation, Truck. People are going to see folks like Martha and say, oh, she's voting illegally. She's not doing what she's supposed to do, when she physically doesn't have a way to hand her ballot to a clerk.
Well, the whole goal is to it appears, is to shrink turnout, particularly in a place like Milwaukee. And that is something I've heard today about that. Look, they're electing a new mayor. The new voting rules are at the same time. We're going to have, what, like 8% of the city actually deciding who the new mayor is? I mean, it feels like, plus the timing of it, not everybody's familiar with this timing. I mean, it appears to have had some impact on turnout, no?
Yeah, and you look back, the primary for this election was back in February. In February, drop boxes were still there. The state Supreme Court they essentially said that circuit court ruling was on hold for that election, but for the actual general election, that is when the drop boxes are no longer there. So ways that voters were able to participate just 2 months ago, that's not the case right now. You'll see what happens with the August primary and then the November election. So a lot of confusion. The same election, the primary for this election had different rules.
That's supposed to be illegal too. That could, this could complicate this election. If it's a close election, somebody could essentially say you can't change the rules in the middle of an election like this. It could very well be a ground for challenging the election results, Shaq.
Yeah, and that goes to the confusion. The director of the Milwaukee Elections Commission just said each clerk is just put in a tough position. They have guidance. She mentioned that she's getting letters from the Republican Party advising her on how her workarounds might not comply with law, or at least suggesting that. But she's saying she is doing what she believes is right. But you have different clerks in different areas doing different things. And, voters in other parts of the state don't have that same benefit as you're seeing here in Milwaukee, especially when, I spoke to a disability rights activist, and she made the point that this is a protected class that any one of us can join at any time. I could have gotten in a car accident on the way here and didn't have the ability to vote, and that is why it is such a problem, and that's why it's going to be looked into in just about a week or so.
Well, congratulations, Wisconsin. You've invited a bunch of litigation and have only made lawyers money. Shaquille Brewster on the ground for us in Milwaukee. Shaq, thanks very much.